All right, so I'm live. Great. Hey, hello everybody. Hello to my little university sessions for Gulp and plumbing pipelines and doing build stuff in JavaScript with Gulp.js. I have an apology to make. I got an email from the organizers saying that they provide a template. As you can see, I don't have the template to provide what they call a pixel perfect experience. What I can offer instead is a perfect pixel experience. So keep with me, I'm doing all in 8-bit now. I'm Stefan Baumgartner. I work for a company called Dynatrace, if you heard it. It's from Linz in Austria. I'm working there for the Ruxit product line, and those guys, I own them that I actually got here. So a huge shout out to Dynatrace for buying my flight and sending me over to Belgium to hold this talk for you. So, if you want to contact me or get in touch with me, you can hit me up on Twitter. That's the most stupidest handle that you can ever have for Twitter. That's parrot, but you just leave out all the vowels. And if you're interested in some writing on Gulp, and mainly Gulp actually, you can go to my blog. It's FETblog, which stands for Front End Technology Talk, and it's a blog. So, check it out if you want to have articles. It's basically, the talk that I give here today is some sort of summary of all the Gulp articles I've ever written on the blog. Well, talking about Gulp. So I'm a web developer, and my technologies, the technologies I work with, are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Well, at least I thought. Actually, it's a lot more. It's Sass or Post-CSS, or less if you want to do CSS, or CoffeeScript, React.js, Angular.js, Browserify, Ember.js, Backbone, and there's a new Angular.js out there, but it's not called Angular.js, but based on the Durandal framework, I have no clue, and I got lost track, honestly. And you can also write in different JavaScript dialects, like CoffeeScript, TypeScript, or LiveScript, or I don't know, and that's just an excerpt of my scope that I have to work with on a daily basis. Every set here, or every dialect, needs some sort of tool behind it. And usually when we started with tooling in the web world, in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we got something like that. That was the very first JavaScript and CSS compressor that we used in our production line to get our CSS files compiled and minified, and our JavaScript files compiled and minified. And as you might think, that's not quite the solution. We weren't that happy with it. So of course, me having not written any Java for about 10 years, started to use a tool for those tasks. And of course, I used Ant back then. Who in here still uses Ant? Quite a few. Okay. So, and Ant is a great tool. Actually, the first company I worked for, I had the opportunity that I just did build scripts for all of their products. So I was there half a year hacking Ant build scripts. So I thought I'm quite confident with Ant, and I know how build scripts work and how I can do basically everything with Ant. So I tried to create a build script for all my JavaScript, CSS, and HTML tasks. And it looked like that. It goes on. Still goes on. Still goes on. Okay, here we are. It has about 1,530 lines of code, just doing the basic stuff. And from the original Ant tasks, not counting any plugins or extras, I just used concat, copy, delete, and make dir. So while it did get my stuff done, I wasn't too happy with it. So I looked for something else, for something more in the vein of the tools that I actually use. And turns out I wasn't the only one. So let's talk a short bit about the JavaScript build tool revolution. In case you didn't know, the JavaScript community has a thing to reinvent all the stuff software engineering did 20 years ago. And they also did the same with JavaScript build tools. And one of the first was Ben Ullman from the jQuery team, or one of the biggest jQuery contributors. And he created a tool called Grunt. Who in here has heard of Grunt? Okay, everybody. Who in here uses Grunt? Okay, quite a few. Who in here uses Gulp already? Oh, also quite a few. So for those guys who use Gulp already, the next half an hour will be about basics, but maybe you'll learn something too. Well, Grunt started a boom. Ben Ullman had the idea that when I'm going to do all my stuff in JavaScript, why not have my build tool also in JavaScript? Quite an idea, I think. So he has written his own build tool. At first, it was mainly a thin layer where you can write some configuration in sorted JSON. And underneath, it executes some built-in tasks already. Then he opened it up, created a plugin system, and suddenly everything was Grunt. But with Grunt came also a lot of problems. First, Grunt files get really, really, really long. Not 1,530 lines, aren't file long, but still really long. Also, Grunt has this thing that every task requires reading and writing operations. So with reading and writing, the Grunt task gets really slow, especially if you have certain steps to do. Think of a JavaScript file. You have to compile with uglify, or minify with uglify, and then concatenate, and then maybe do some more with the same file. It requires you, for each step in your build chain, reading and writing operations. And reading and writing operations is the thing that makes Grunt not only hard to configure, because you have to take care of all the intermediate results, but also because of the reading and writing operations on the file system, it has lots and lots of overhead to deal with. And all the issues, Grunt was a great tool. It had a great community. There were lots and lots of Grunt plugins doing basically anything for you. But due to his issues, some other guys thought, hey, maybe we can do a little better. And what they did, they created Gulp. And now I have to do a short disclaimer. First of all, I'm biased, because occasionally I contribute to Gulp, which is, I did 2 pull requests in the last half year. But anyhow, occasionally I contribute to Gulp. And I'm writing a book on Gulp. So I spent about the last year just thinking about how to do amazing stuff with Gulp, stuff that I want to show you today. You can find the book. It's an ebook, and it's in the early access program. I'm not quite finished yet. Actually, after this talk, I'm going to finish chapter 8. You can find this book under this URL. And of course, I have some coupon code for you. And also, I don't know Java anymore. So I'm here at the Java conference, which is a great opportunity for me. But I have no clue how to write Java. And if you have any questions on the Java equivalent to all the JavaScript stuff I'm going to show you, I might not tell you. I can't tell you. I've written a little bit of Gradle in the last few weeks, but not enough to give you quite the comparison to that, what I'm doing here with Gulp. So let's start with Gulp. If you're okay with me, let's go. Well, the Gulp ecosystem. As said before, the basic idea is that you leave all your build stuff in the language or in the ecosystem where it's already in. So when we are doing JavaScript, why not run our build files also with JavaScript, or write our build files with JavaScript? And the tools we're using here is, of course, Node.js and NPM. Node.js provides us with the runtime. You can write JavaScript, and you can run JavaScript. And NPM is the package manager for Node. And it's also the host of all things Gulp. The Gulp CLI, the Gulp runtime environment, and all the Gulp plugins. Speaking of which, Gulp consists of a few parts. First of all, there's the Gulp CLI. The Gulp CLI is a globally installed package. and from anywhere in your file system, you can run it, execute it, and it checks its direct environment in the folder where you are, if there's anything Gulp related that it can execute. If it finds Gulp in there in the local node modules, it's going to start it. And Gulp itself reads the Gulp file that's in there. The Gulp file itself requires all the plugins that you install, so it can run Gulp and transform all your files into the output that you want. These are the instructions to install Gulp. You can see here npm install -g Gulp CLI. That's the globally installed Gulp CLI. Makes Gulp available everywhere you are. With npm init, you create a new node folder for your own files, and then you can install Gulp locally here. That's a very important concept. The Gulp CLI is globally available. Gulp is locally available for every project that you use. Why? Well, Gulp has some rather fast release cycles, so I thought it's better that you can have a universally usable Gulp CLI that just kicks off the local Gulp that you have, and you run the local Gulp for the project that you have, so don't have any dependency issues. All right. In this workshop, I'm going to show you the next version of Gulp, which is Gulp 4.0. There are few changes from Gulp 3.9 that might be interesting for the ones that already use Gulp. You are going to see the new stuff that will be hopefully available by the end of this year. Hopefully. So if you want to install Gulp 4.0, you can do that directly from the GitHub repositories. Those are the installation commands to do so. All right. Now we know how to run Gulp. Let's go on with the basics. You have two calls with Gulp that create streams. One is gulp.source. It reads a lot of files, spits out virtual file objects that you can transform and combine any way you like. Once you're done with that, you can write them back to the real file system with gulp.test. That's the basic thing. One is a readable stream, one is a writable stream. You read files and you write files. And here comes the clue. You can pipe anything you like in between them, like, for instance, here, Uglify. Uglify is a JavaScript compressor creating a minified and optimized JavaScript end product. And this transformation takes the files you've read, transforms it, and passes it on to the next stage, which might be concatenation. And in between, there's no reading or writing to the file system whatsoever. It's just reading files in the beginning, writing files in the end, and in between, you're doing transforms. And that's what I want to show you now. Right, so I've already prepared something because I don't trust conference Wi-Fi, but so far it has been very stable. We have here a little app. Nothing extraordinary. It's a basic HTML file. It's basically a to-do app. Like, I know that the to-do app is the JavaScript hello world, I think. So why not doing a to-do app? And you have some styles which are written in Sass. Sass is a CSS preprocessor. And you have a little JavaScript app that's actually not that good of an app. It's just basic jQuery code, but it does the thing. It's just for demo reasons, based on jQuery. And here's jQuery not minified, and it's a really huge and long file. I already installed the Gulp CLI. So if I write gulp-version, you see the CLI version is on 0.4.0, and it already finds the version that's located in my repository. If I'm going outside of this repo into gulp-version, you see there's no local Gulp available. Back to the workshop directory. I installed Gulp with npm. Gulp.js Gulp #4.0. And what npm does, it saves all of my installed dependencies, locally installed dependencies, in a file called package.json. So let's have a look at the package.json file. As you can see here, I installed some development dependencies. Gulp is here from GitHub because we are working with the preview version. I also updated Node.js yesterday evening to Node.js 4.0, so maybe all of the things I'm doing here are going to crash, but hey, let's see. And lots of plugins I want to show you today. Every plugin is stored in the Node modules folder. And since Node modules or npm has a flat dependency tree, you see that all the dependencies we are going to need to have just a few little calls. But npm is taking care of that. All right, so let's open up a Gulp file. You create a new Gulp file. And then what you can do here is basically write plain, straightforward JavaScript. Nothing more, nothing less. What I'm doing here is JavaScript runnable on the Node.js environment. I'm defining a constant, Gulp, and I require Gulp from the Node package repository or from the locally installed Node modules. So what this does, that's basically some sort of import mechanism for Node. I require Gulp, and I have to make sure that Gulp is locally available here in the Node modules folder, which it is. Somewhere down there. Okay. Just believe me. Now I'm going to write my very first and very basic Gulp task. I'll create a Gulp task with gulp.task. Let's call it scripts. And it takes a function as parameter. This is actually ECMAScript 6 syntax already, so you can do that with Node.js 4, hopefully. And what I'm doing now is I call up some files. I want to work with the scripts that are written by me, not the vendor scripts. So here I'm just adding some sort of path. And then I say appscripts *.js, which clubs all the JavaScript files that are in app scripts. If I want to take any of those files, I can do the glob star. This is a double asterisk. It tells you that to go deep into every directory that you have. So write down everywhere in app scripts any JavaScript file that you can find. And the most basic Gulp task would be to copy all those files to a destination directory. So this is the first call, gulp.source. It clubs the files. This one saves the files. And what you can see here is the return parameter, and this is very important. I can't stress that out enough. It's one of those things that in Gulp 3 you could get away with it, but not in Gulp 4 anymore. Gulp works totally asynchronously. So every task that you do, you can run in parallel. And for Gulp to work asynchronously, it needs to know what's happening inside the function. So here you create a stream, a readable stream, and you return it to the Gulp task organizing environment. And with it knowing what's happening inside or which streams are getting passed through, it can orchestrate all the tasks in between and knows when they end. So please always use the return. Never do without. That's something, if you've written Gulp 3, you have to get used to. You can also return some other things. If you know how to work with JavaScript promises, for instance, you can return a promise there. We are coming to that later. So now when I'm going to write Gulp, and the task name, bingo, that's what Gulp does. So the very basic, very first Gulp task totally works. Look inside, ls-dist. We have here all the files that we had previously in the app folder. So, but copying is actually rather boring, I think. So let's do a little more. Let's uglify those files. Again, I require the plugin. And maybe a concatenation plugin to create one file. And I see I have one jQuery version that doesn't belong here. So I delete it. So I require two plugins. I already installed them previously. And now I'm piping my files through those two plugins. I pipe it through Uglify, so all the files that I club here or that I select here are going to be uglified or minified. Let's do without concat first. Let's see what happens. It takes a little longer, actually almost a second. And you have a look at the dist folder. The files are here again. But if you look at main.js, it's totally minifiled. It's just gibberish anymore. And if you look at the vendor folder, jQuery, and that's what took so long, you uglified the whole jQuery file. And I'm not able to read jQuery source code at all, and minified even less. So starting here, everything is in the so-called virtual file system. So everything that happens here is in memory. And that's what makes Gulp so fast. So if you're doing Uglify, you're just working on streams and buffers inside the memory and change all those files. So if we add another task, like concatenation, bring it down to one file, we are still in memory and pipe our red files through the next step. Concat, however, takes one more parameter, namely the new file name. Why is it so? Gulp not only has streams and a virtual file system, it also has virtual files, of course. So every file that you select and load into memory has a few properties, like the name, which was the original file name, the contents, which contents are in the file, and the path, where does the file belong to. And all of those three are very important. And when we're doing a concatenation, we're actually losing one of those properties, like the file name. So where, when we are bringing them down to one file, what's the new file name? And that's the parameter that concat takes here. So we have to set this one property from the new virtual file to main.min.js. So if we're running it again, and going into the dist folder, we have just one file, main.min.js, concatenated from jQuery and my own application. And all the gibberish that you can ask for. All right, so that's our very first, very basic task. Why does main.min.js just be in the dist folder and not dist-scripts? Gulp takes from any file that you select everything that is a wildcard as its base name. So everything that is before this wildcard is going to be neglected. If you're going to remove the scripts in the file name that we club, and run Gulp scripts again, oh, that didn't work. Didn't I save it? Okay, that didn't work. I'm so sorry. Oh, maybe that's from the concatenation. Wait a second. yeah, now I have the scripts folder here again. So everything that is a wildcard gets added to the file name. And of course, here I'm going to rename the whole file, and I'm dropping the wildcard file name extensions. So I actually would have to add scripts here again if I want to have it in the scripts folder, which I want to have. Pretty cool. Here it is. Also with the files I added earlier. All right, let's do some more tasks. So that's the very basic task for scripts, for JavaScript. Stacking up various tasks is actually one of the greatest things in Gulp, and it's very important if you, let's say, working with Angular.js. Angular.js has a few different minification or uglification processes to go because of all the dependency injection stuff that's happening here. So with Angular.js, you end up in doing pipelines that are far longer than this one. It's not just 2 steps, but maybe 4 to 6 steps, creating new, checking all the dependencies and all the stuff that's going on inside the framework. So look out for all the Gulp-ng plugins on NPM, and you will find the plugins that you need to create the best output for your for Angular application. But that's not only for JavaScript. Let's do something for styles. The cool thing here with Uglify and Concat is that this is just plain JavaScript. You know, Uglify is a JavaScript library, and we can use this JavaScript library inside a build tool and then inside some continuous integration environment. Uglify also had some sort of Java plugin previously, which we used with our original ARM build, but well, it didn't work that well. So let's do some styles. We can use Sass. Sass is a CSS preprocessor, and of course it has a Gulp plugin. So CSS preprocessor means that you can use stuff like variables, and I guess in the example I just used variables. And the cool thing is Sass is actually a Ruby tool, and not only a Ruby tool, but also a Ruby tool that can be compiled to a C++ binary. So what we are using here is some native C++ written code using some Ruby dependencies and compiling Sass files into CSS. So that's also a wrapper pointing to this. And we want to minify our CSS files. So we make another Gulp task. But this time, I'm just going to point it to one file. So you can also write, so you can also point or just use one special file for all this, mainly because the main CSS file already includes all the files that I need. So I don't have to take a bundle of all those files and combine them. So Sass does the compilation from CSS syntax to CSS and also the whole inclusion and concatenation stuff. And then I pipe it to Sass. And let's save it at this styles. So Gulp styles, boom. It's just 30 milliseconds, which is ultra fast, I think. And if you have a look at the dist folder, you see here is the main CSS file. If we look at the CSS file, it's all just plain text or just nested. We want to minify it. So let's pipe it through the next step, which is CSS min. And the cool thing with Gulp here is that I can add as many steps as I want. If I want to rename my file afterwards, I just can add the Gulp rename plugin. If I want to do something else with it, just add another step to your pipeline. You don't have to actually always save those files. You just can end the pipeline with something different. So we're doing a linting task, which checks if I've written good and readable and sane JavaScript, if that's even possible. So I'm requiring JS hint, which is like JS lint, but not that picky. And here I'm going to actually use an array of different files because I just want to lint my own application. I don't want to lint jQuery because I can't lint jQuery. They have a different coding style that I have. Maybe I have some already minifiled vendor script, which is concatenated, minified, uglified. You can't read anything. And if you have something like that, it's really hard for a linting tool not to find any problems with it. So what I'm going to do is I glop all the scripts that I have in my scripts folder, but then I'm going to exclude all the scripts in the vendor folder. So here again we have the glop star that goes deep to every level or every folder that's nested inside this folder, and here we have the exclamation mark which tells us, okay, leave out those files. So what it does is just selecting the files that match both criteria. And if you work with such globs, always do the exceptions in the end. So first glob everything and then throw away files that you don't need. We pipe them through JS hint. And what's happening here is that JS hint alters the virtual file object. So it's not a virtual file object in the sense of it has contents, a path and a name, but it is also a linting state. There's another added property which tells us if that's a good written JavaScript file or not. So the virtual file object gets altered, another property is added, and we can use this property, let's say, to report if we have written something good or something bad. And we can use this property to pipe it through another reporter, which fails if we haven't done so. So let's do gulp lint, and it seems like that we've written some good and reasonable JavaScript. Let's change that by pissing off Douglas Crockford. Boom! I have an error in app scripts main.js, which is exactly that. It looks even funnier when we are going to include all the, whoops. If we're going to include all the jQuery that's in there. Boom, yeah, about 51 errors. And it's even funnier if you take the uglified version into account. So let's exclude that. All right. So here, we just grabbed one file and piped it through something that's written in C++. Here, we took a lot of files and concatenated them and uglified them into one file. And here, we just globbed some files and piped it through something that's not actually some destination. It's just output on the command line. And we can run all those three together. They're going to start in parallel and they're going to end in parallel. So, to the API, Gulp.task creates a new task. It requires you to return either a stream, a promise, or an observable. So if you are into RxJS, you can use Rx observables to return them, and Gulp knows how to handle those. A promise is a way of executing JavaScript asynchronously. So everything that's asynchronous can be returned from Gulp.task for Gulp to organize it. Gulp source globs files and returns a stream of virtual file objects. Glob is the pattern to select those files, with the glob star, asterisk, asterisk. And each file can be piped through a process. Gulp.js saves it back. That's about the API. So we define a task, we give it a name, we select some files, and then we are doing stuff with it before saving it. So that's already pretty cool. So we have, instead of, there were actually just two, just two processes with each step that we did. But we could pipe many more processes next to it. And Gulp just runs all the files, pipes it through, and in the end, you get the result. With Grunt, or as far as I know, any other build tool, you either have tasks that are doing way too much, so that you need huge configurations, or you have smaller tasks and lots of intermediate results, because you always have reading files, writing files, reading files again, writing files. So instead of having all those weird configurations running, just do a neat little pipeline and pipe your files through. So that's about creating a task. But we also want to organize those tasks. For now, I've written scripts, styles, and the linting task. And we want to organize them to be run in parallel by just one call. We have a function for that, which is called Gulp parallel. And if we are going to add the names of those three tasks, they're going to be executed concurrently. But actually, sometimes we don't want it. We want to have lint, for example, run before scripts. And for that, we have a function called Gulp.series. So let's, again, to the command line, check it out. I'm creating a new task. I call it default. Okay, I'm creating it up there, so it's easy for me to read. I don't know about you. And then here, at the second parameter, the first parameter in a Gulp task function is always the task's name. And the second one is always a function. So we can pass here either a function that we've written, or we are passing one of the Gulp execution functions. For instance, I'm going to use Gulp parallel, and I want to run styles and scripts in parallel. The default task is also an alias, so if you just type Gulp, the default task gets automatically executed. Whoops. Task never defines styles. Okay, I have to write it down there. I guess I have to define it first before I run it. Yeah, that's it. And as you can see, it started Gulp styles and scripts concurrently, and afterwards it finished styles and scripts at roughly the same time. And before scripts, I want to run the linting task. So what I can do here, Gulp parallel takes the following parameters: either a string pointing to the task, which you have to define early on, apparently, or also a function. So you can add as many functions as you like here too. And it also has an endless amount of arguments, so you can pass anything you like. So what I'm doing here is that I wrap scripts into Gulp.series, running for a serial execution chain, running lint first, and then scripts. So what should happen now is that styles and this series should be executed in parallel. And that's what it does. You see, it starts as styles, series. Series starts as lint, finishes lint, then starts scripts, and then both styles, scripts, and series are finished afterwards. And the whole task is finished next to it. And as said, you can do basically anything you like. If you want to add another function to the series execution, just add it. In this case, I don't have any string to return, or promise to return, or observable to return. So what I'm doing is I'm passing a done callback function, just to tell Gulp that after this execution of console log, the whole thing is done. And that's what it does. After scripts, it starts anonymous, because I haven't given it any name, and it tells you hello. So that's pretty neat, and Gulp Parallel and Gulp Series can be combined endlessly, actually. So we can do another task which cleans the distribution directory. Again, it takes a Gulp star. And that's also very interesting. Del isn't a Gulp plugin by default. It's just a Node.js module that deletes stuff on the file system, and it returns a promise. And those two properties are enough for it to be used with Gulp. So if you happen to have some Gulp clean module or Gulp clean plugin that you find, don't use it. Use the Del module, because it's the most direct way to use it. And now we want to pipe them through. First, we want to clean all our stuff, and then we can run styles and our scripts pipe in parallel. Series closed, parallel closed, series closed, task closed. All right, that's almost kind of like Lisp. And that's exactly what it does. First, it runs clean, it finishes clean. Then in parallel, it starts styles and a series that executes lints and scripts, and in the end, it closes all down again. So you can combine them endlessly. As said, it's almost Lisp-like, but a good way of creating certain execution chains. So the second parameter of Gulp task is always a function, one function. And it can take either a real function, as we have seen in those tasks that we've created earlier, like Gulp styles, Gulp scripts, Gulp lint, or a task function like Gulp series or Gulp parallel. And Gulp series runs it in sequential order, and Gulp parallel runs it concurrently. And both task functions accept task names and other functions as parameters. So you can combine an endless amount of functions that you want to execute there. Even if you're into that, you could write the whole setup that I did just in anonymous functions that are added in some sort of Gulp series, Gulp parallel execution chain. You can combine it infinitely. So if you have certain execution chains that require you to do lots of stuff, feel free to do it with these possibilities. As said, we are defining something that runs in series and something that runs in parallel. So far so good. What we've done already is we are deleting stuff, we are compiling stuff. So if you want to build our application, that's already pretty good. So we have a basic application build file. But we want to do it, we want to go one step beyond. We can build it and deploy it, but what if we want to write while we are, want to compile it while we are writing? What if we want to see each of our change directly into in the browser window? That's what we are going to create now. So what we are doing, we are starting to work on, or starting to use Gulp watchers, which is a way to see if a file is going to change and then trigger some tasks. And we are going to use a plugin or a node tool called BrowserSync, yeah, sorry, which we are going to use to create some sort of quick and easy development server to write our application. Okay, and again, let's go to the command line. I can't get enough of Batman, apparently. All right, so first of all, let's start with the basic watcher. So we have here our default task. It runs clean, then styles and scripts in parallel, and I just have to find the right spot to continue. Because after we've written our application, I want to continue working. I guess that should, no, that's still parallel. That's serious. Are you serious? That's parallel. Here, yeah, here we are. Yep. So that's the last series. And here we are going to create some Gulp watches. Again, Gulp watch takes almost the same arguments as Gulp source did. I'm going to watch stuff. All the CSS files that I have done there. And if one of those should change, I'm going to run, again with the task execution function, the styles task. So what Gulp does now is it's going to delete everything, builds everything, and then watches out for changes. Okay, that's, I guess that's, I should have installed some Lisp syntax checker here. Yep, here we are. As you can see, Gulp doesn't end anymore. It just runs as long as I tell it to stop. And if I'm going to change one of my SCSS variables, boom, you see, it starts styles and finishes styles directly after I've changed something. And back again. Here on the right side, in 25 milliseconds. That's pretty fast. It's a small style sheet, okay, but still, that's pretty fast. If I want to finish Gulp, I just press Ctrl+C, and it's gone. Let's do that also for scripts. And with scripts, I want to run it on all the JavaScript files. But first, of course, I want to lint them. And then I want to compile them. So if I'm going to add something here, console log. Hello, Devoxx. You see, first lint, then it finishes lint, then it starts script, then it finishes scripts. Actually, I don't find it that cool that I have to always tell him to run first lint and then scripts. Let's make lint a dependency of scripts. By adding here a Gulp series function. All right. So now every time I'm going to execute scripts, lint is going to be executed automatically for me. And if I'm doing my watcher and change something, I can make sure that lint is always bound to the running of scripts. That's pretty sweet. As I said, that's due to a combination of combining task execution functions and watches. All right, so now we can, every time we are going to write something, we can compile those new assets. Now we want to see what's actually inside. So we are creating our development server. And for that, we are going to use a software called BrowserSync. BrowserSync is actually made to actually it's just a proxy to your dev server, which allows you to watch your result from any device you like. And when you scroll on that device, you scroll automatically on every other device, so you can do some sort of cross-browser responsive layout checks. But it's not only a proxy, it also comes with a server on its own. We are going to run it here. We are telling it to start the server from a base directory. And that's also a cool feature. That's basically just a static site server. It just spits out the index.html that you have and runs and includes all the resources relatively to the folder that you have. So we can tell him first serve all the files from the dist folder, and if you can't find them there, serve them from the app folder. So in dist, we can serve the CSS file and the compiled JavaScript file, and we don't have to move the index.html over there because we can serve it directly here from the app folder. All right. And of course, I have to use the done callback again, just to tell Gulp that we are finished with it. And here I'm going to start the server right before our watcher. All right. Boom. Again. Sever. I have too many typos today. Sewer. All right, let's start it. Now it works. Great. And boom, we have a server here. It opens up Chrome, and we see the website that we have, and which is just a basic to-do app. Doing part 1 of this show. All right, so what I think would be nice if we not only have a server here to see the results, but also get our newly compiled files injected there. And that's also something that's possible with BrowserSync. BrowserSync has some sort of live reload where it listens on changes on the file system and it reloads the certain files directly into your browser so that you can see the new results. So what we are going to add is another watcher. And this time, we're going to read everything that's in the distribution folder. And then, since the second parameter is always a function, we just can add the reload function from BrowserSync and tell BrowserSync to start new. So let's start this again. And this is what my website looks like if I don't have any styles. And here with styles. And I can do that the whole day. That's pretty cool, and it's also pretty fast. So that's actually something where you can easily and with an enormous speed develop new JavaScript applications or style new websites. You write something on the left side and you see it directly on the right side. That's almost like live coding. And if I'm going to add something to scripts, hello Devoxx, it takes a little longer. And then I have here the alert. Or let's do a confirm. Hello Devoxx. Okay. But also with JavaScript, you get the new JavaScript files directly loaded into your browser. You see the new results of the application, and you can continue to work. All right, so we have Gulp. Actually, just in intermission, I'm really happy that the thing with Gulp watched work, because that were my pull requests to Gulp 4. So actually, I've written something that can work. Well, Gulp Watch creates a file watcher and it listens to changes directly on the file system, which is a great thing. Changes include change, add, and unlink, amongst others. So what you can do here is listen to certain events, like not only if the file has changed, but also if a new file has been added, which is totally important if you want to create new files to your JavaScript application. Always use as much files as you can. If a new file gets added, it runs the whole function that you have put in the end here. And also unlink. Unlink is just another word for deleting files. So yeah, if you're going to delete one file, the task gets also triggered. And with browser sync, we have a development tool that can be fully integrated in Gulp. That's also the recommended way of browser sync to do so. Maybe I'm going to show you another way of reloading stuff. If you don't want to have a watcher on all those files, what you can do is pipe browser sync directly to your tasks with the stream functions. So what we are doing here is that we are going to save the files and then tell browser sync to stream the results in there. That should also work, hopefully. Where is it? Yeah. Boom. Yep. And you see, it didn't say reload, it said inject. So injected the new file here that we were going to add, injected main.css. That is pretty good. And here, nothing happens because we don't have a watcher here. Let's do it here too, because you can see something else. Starting in the new. Okay, this is pretty good. Okay. And then deleting it again. Okay, and here it does a reload because we changed the main JavaScript file and it needs to be booted up. So CSS it can inject, and for JavaScript, it needs to reload the browser window. All right. So we can write function watches. Actually, this Gulp.watch returns a watcher object where you can add even more events if you want, and we can execute functions. So the syntax is the pattern to watch for on the left side, and any function that you like on the right side. And of course, we need to call done because we can't return a stream or something asynchronous. We have to tell Gulp that we are finished with our task. We watch this Gulp pattern, we execute this stuff. And for the server, we just tell browser sync to serve two directories. First, it looks in the dist folder if the files are here. If they aren't there, it takes it. They take it from the app folder. If they aren't in the app folder, we get a 404. And it's a static server. And with bsync.reload or browsersync.reload, we can reload the whole browser window if we have a change. And with bsync.stream, we can reload the asset directly from the stream. But as you have seen, every time we changed something in the JavaScript, it actually took quite some time. And this is because we are going to, or we were going to minify the whole jQuery library, which is about 30K minified, or something like that, or even 200K. I don't know. I have to look. So that's a huge process, and it takes 1 second, and we can't afford 1 second if we want to see live results in the browser. So what we are going to do now is to take care of those performance-heavy tasks. Some tasks take way too long. So we have Uglify, and Uglify, especially for jQuery, needs some time. So we have to ask ourselves, every time we are going to do a change, do we really need to compile the whole stuff? Do we really need to compile jQuery each time we are going to reload? No, we have finished. Wouldn't it be better if we just select those files or filter those files that actually have changed, so we have a smaller set, do the performance-heavy operations on the smaller set, remember the old files again, and continue with the other operations. Turns out that we can, and I'm not getting tired of this give. We have actually a few ways of doing so, and one thing that seems to be the one that is used throughout all the projects is using a cache. Gulp cached. With that, we can tell directly before the performance-heavy task, create a cache, we call it scripts, and this cache checks if those files have already been worked on, and if so, it checks if the new file or if the file is newer or has changed since the last time this task has been run. So what we are going to do here is every file that we are globbing here, we are putting into a cache, and just if there's a newer file, we are going to continue with the pipe. So if I'm just doing this, let's run the task again. Okay, we have some cache. And I'm writing here console or alert hello Devoxx. You see, it was a lot faster because we didn't have to compile jQuery, but we also got a problem. jQuery is not here anymore because we filtered it, of course. So we just have the application that we have written to begin with. So what we have to do is after those performance operations, we just remember every file from the cache where we put it in. Whoops. Okay, I haven't required the plugin. Now I'm going to change something like hello Devoxx. Boom, and here it is. And as you can see, whoops, here it is again. And as you can see, the output now has jQuery too. It's a much bigger output. But the compilation time of the whole thing just took about 42 milliseconds, which is like nothing. And we can do even more. Now we have created cache for the scripts task, but we have another task that does a lot of stuff that we might not want to do, which is the linting task. And Gulp 4, and this is exclusively the Gulp 4, has a new cool feature called last run. So what you can do here with lint is if you want to just lint the files that have changed, because actually that's what we want to do. We don't want to lint every file again. We just can use the since parameter and can use the Gulp last run API and get a timestamp from the last run of lint. So what Gulp does now is just select those files that have changed since lint has been run the last time. And this is, in terms of performance, even better than this cached and remembered construct, because here those files are not getting even loaded. They just load those files that have been changed. Here we have to load all files first and then filter them. And here we just can run those load those files that we want. So I'm going to remove that because that's kind of annoying. Processing reloads. And here we can see lint just took 12 seconds. Okay, we just had one file, but still we were able to just select those files. Maybe let's do it with a new file. Demo.js. Console log. Hello everyone. Okay. And as you can see here, the new file, it just took something added, one file changed, and the new file just took 5 milliseconds. Let's do it in sequence so that you can see it better. Lint took 55 milliseconds for the first application, and now we're going to change one, and it's just 6.8 milliseconds just for the one file. And that's how you do incremental builds in Gulp. And I think that's pretty powerful. I tried to do an incremental copy in Gradle once, and it didn't turn out that well. So this is actually something where you can easily just check for new files, see what has changed, and reduce the build time of your build a lot. One last way of doing incremental builds in Gulp. We haven't had anything to do with our HTML file. So what we are going to do is now copy the HTML file to the dist folder. But here we are going to use also some incremental build. With newer. We're going to check if those files in the source folder in app are newer as those files in dist, and if they are, we're going to copy them to dist. Boom. So each time we are going to change something in HTML, oops. It checks it if it's new. I didn't have a processing reload here. Create a new file. Stuff.html. And it's already directly here in the dist folder too. And it just took 6 milliseconds again. It's just basically reading and writing one file. So we have 3 ways of doing incremental builds. One is using a cache where you remember stuff, and one is using Gulp last run and the since parameter of file globbing. Those 2 require Gulp to already run. So this is just something that you can use for, let's say, local development environments where you constantly have to reload or constantly want to check if the thing that you write on is new and should be compiled or not. This is not something if you want to run Gulp and let it end and run it again and let it end, because every time you start it, the Gulp last run gets resetted because it doesn't save that. Same with the cache and with the remember plugin. It's different with Gulp newer. With Gulp newer, it just checks file system timestamps. So this thing works every time you're going to run Gulp. All right. As I said, Gulp cache and Gulp remember can be used to create file caches. We have Gulp last run, and Gulp newer is for incremental copies and builds on a per file basis. And that's how we created it. All right, so that's about it for part 1. We are doing now a half an hour break. If you have any questions during that time, feel free to come here. I will stay here, I think. So just hit me up and talk to me. See you in half an hour. Okay, we are back. I don't know if you've seen it here. I'm top talk of the day on spot number 2. Thanks to the 15 voters who voted for me. Really great. In the break, a lot of people were here. Thank you for showing up and asking me stuff. One question that I heard throughout was, now you're teaching us Gulp in this 3-hour university session with 80 minutes left. Have you heard of Webpack? Or Broccoli.js, or any other build tool, you name it. The thing is that there are lots of build tools out there, and I think with every new technology comes a new build tool. Gulp got its traction from the Angular.js community because they were able to do lots of operations sequentially without saving files or dealing with intermediates. React.js is very popular right now, and Webpack is a tool for React.js because it deals with lots of issues that Gulp can't handle that well, or people think Gulp can't handle that well. The thing is, and Ember.js, for instance, Ember.js uses Broccoli. I always think that maybe they're using Broccoli because it's cute that their logo, their hamster, is eating some sort of broccoli, and maybe that's why they choose Broccoli as build tool. I don't know. Anyhow, they have every technology searches for that build tool that is totally a 100% fit for the needs. So if you are totally into one technology like Angular.js 2 or React.js or Ember.js, have a look at your community and take a look what build tool they are using throughout their plugins, their components, their modules, and then you get a sense of which build tool might be the one for your project. But with Gulp, and that's why I'm going to love Gulp and stick to Gulp and teaching you Gulp is, Gulp has from all the build tools that I've seen the most beautiful API, a Gulp file you can read and you can write easily. You've seen me, it's just writing pipe and a function. It can't get easier than that. And I think you can do everything else with Gulp that you can do with other build tools. And in part 2, I'm going to boost up the examples that we already had to something even more advanced, integrating some other tools there. And then I'm going to show you one amazing way of dealing with lots and lots of files of different kind. And this is one stuff where I think that Gulp is just the best tool available for that. So let's continue. Usually I wanted to leave that out, but I think we should have a short source map interlude. Who in here has heard about source maps already? Yeah, okay. Here, this is our application as it runs in the browser. And as you can see, it's total gibberish. You can't make out anything. If you have to debug it, you're pretty much screwed. Same with the CSS file. That's the CSS you have to debug once it is in the browser. And as you can see nothing. So source maps are a great way of dealing with that. The idea is that with every transformation that you make, you're remembering the origin where it comes from. So that in the end, once you're going to develop inside the browser, you have a file where you can look up how it originally looked like. And that's what source maps are about. There's, of course, a plugin. It's called Gulp Source Maps. And with me, I just have to. Yeah, that's my inner monk, I guess, but I can't stand having them not in line. So, and let's do the scripts. So, source maps is a rather easy plugin to use. The first thing that you do is run all your files and initialize source maps. So with source maps.init, the virtual file object I was talking earlier on gets another property, the map. So instead of having just the contents, the name, and the path, it has another property where it stores all the transformations. Now with all the transformation that we are doing, uglify and concatenation, each of those plugins knows that there is a source map, and when it sees that a source map is available at the file object, it transforms it accordingly to the operations that have been done. So uglify sees that the source is original, makes transformations, and stores all the mapping information in the source map that is available at that point. Concat sees, oh, there is already a source map with information. I'm going to alter this information depending on the stuff that I'm doing right now. So it adds up every time we are adding a new plugin. So we initialized it here. And before we're going to save the files, we are going to save the source map. In the same that is a command where we are telling Gulp to actually save the source maps, to write them down. So we are going to give this as a directory. That's the same directory where we're going to save the JavaScript files. So that's relatively to the files we're going to save. If we're going to save them in this script, it's going to be saved also in this script. Let's run it. Hopefully I don't have any. Does this still work? Yeah, cool. So what you see here is not only from BrowserSync, the syncing script, and our compiled stuff, like the main min or the styles, but you also see a new folder called source. That's a folder, as you can see, that isn't anywhere in our dist folder. It's just some virtual folder that the browser recognizes based on the source maps that we gave him. As you can see here in main.min.js, we have one line more, the source mapping URL, and it points to the main min.js map. In the file system, I don't open it because Atom crashes every time I do that. In the file system, in the scripts folder, we now have the main min.js map. That's the new map that we created. And if you have a look into it, it basically includes all the content that we have had originally. But not only the content, but also, and that doesn't fit somewhere on the screen. Okay, yeah, sorry, I've opened the wrong file. This also includes the original content, now with line breaks. And here are source mapping informations. Those are encoded bits where the browser knows which line and character in the output file is going to be mapped to which line and character in the original file. And those two bits are going to be transformed each time we are going to do a transformation with a Gulp plugin. And in the end, we have here our source folder, and we have the demo.js file, our jQuery file, and the main.js file. And we can even do breakpoints in those files. So if we add another to-do here, it breaks directly on the generated file, and we can debug it here. Okay, that's a rather stupid way to break it, but anyhow, it's possible. And that's one of the strengths with Gulp, that you can do that with any file that you transform and any plugin that you like, as long as the plugin is aware of source maps. For instance, CSS Min, the Minify CSS plugin that we used here, hasn't been aware of source maps for about, I don't know, I guess it just happened in the last 2 months that they finally integrated source maps there. You had to use another one. But since it includes source maps, we can just pipe our code through and get everything we want. Same with sass. So we initialize the source map here too, and write it again in the same directory as our output files, dist/styles. Okay, here we have Gulp. Boom. So in the source folder, we now not only have the JavaScript files, but also our variables and the modules that we have written. And if you're going to select some headline, let's say this one, we're also seeing here, I don't know if you can see that on the big screen. I'm sure you can because it's a rather big screen. You can see the point where we have defined it in our SCSS file. So we have the original source files handy where you need them. When developing, you can debug those original source files while still run the compiled assets like you would do in production. Of course, you don't want to have this stuff in production. So that's going to be good because I'm now going to install something from npm. Or maybe I have it already. Yes. Of course, you don't want to have them written in production. So you can create an easy wrapper just to activate them once you are in development mode. And we are going to do that by writing a plugin of our own. Through2 is a way for Through2 is actually a node module dealing with streams in general, not just Gulp streams, but since every Gulp stream is a real stream, we can use all the streams plugins or stream modules that we have on Node available for Gulp. And what we are going to do is we create a new function which does nothing. And then we are going to create a dev wrapper. If we are in dev mode, we are going to return the original function that we wanted to call. Otherwise, we are going to do the no-op function. So now we can wrap this source map calls, especially the source map.write, in this dev function, and it gets just executed once we are developing with it. Let's see if that works. Boom. Looking good. Let's delete the dist folder. And we should have a map. We do. And once we flick the switch, we don't have it anymore. We don't have the map available. And this is a rather nice way of dealing with different outputs for different environments. If you have a development environment where you want to have the real changes based on your source code, you just flick the switch to true, and you get all the extra plugins that you need and that you want to use. And if you're in production, you just flick it to false. You can do that even with a command line API. And you don't get the extra output that you need for development. It's production-ready code. You still stick with the same pipeline. You just have some additions, some extra steps. to your pipeline. And this is one of the things where Gulp is really, really elegant. Not only can you add and remove plugins and tasks and operations as you like, you can make them optional depending on the environment you're currently developing with. So source maps just in dev mode, just when you are developing and not for production. All right, that's for the short interlude on source maps. Another thing I want to show you is Browserify. It's for things like Babel.js or React.js. I just saw on Twitter that somebody in here wants to see some React.js code. I'm very sorry, I don't have any React.js code with me. But I'm going to show you the things how you could compile React.js code with Gulp and with Browserify. The thing is, who in here has heard about Browserify already? Okay, cool. Not that many, not as much as I presumed. Browserify is a cool tool for handling dependencies and packages inside client-side JavaScript. You can actually install modules with npm install, and not a Node.js module, but a front-end module like jQuery. And you can use the same require and module export syntax as you would with Node.js in general. So Browserify has a command line tool like Gulp has, but it also has an API. And Browserify has a streaming API. So if you are going to use Browserify, it emits a stream, and Gulp emits a stream. So both tools emit streams, but they still look kind of different. Gulp emits virtual file objects in a virtual file system. Browserify just emits the plain text. Wouldn't it be great if you could somehow combine them? And that's what we are going to do now. So back to the command line. First, we create some Browserify code. I'm going to do that outside of my usual app. New file, new folder, Browserify. Exports. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to create a new folder. Browserify, and in here, a new file, main.js, and a new file, module.js, and the module just exports some call. This is the common JS syntax for module handling. Module exports is a function, just like you would do in Node.js. And in the new main.js file, we can require it. And call it. So that's our new app, so to speak. That's integrated in Browserify, in Gulp. First, we're going to require Browserify. And then we are calling the API directly. We create a bundle where Browserify points to the entry we want to compile, which is app Browserify main.js. Then we create a new task. We can also call it Browserify. It doesn't interfere with anything we have in this global space, with a new function. And actually, the bundle has a function called, you guess it, bundle, and bundle returns a stream. So from here on, we are working in streams. So actually, this should be runnable by Browserify, by Gulp already. Boom. Browserify, okay, that's not the thing I wanted. Okay, as you can see, Browserify runs, Browserify terminates, but we haven't seen anything yet. Why is that? That's because the bundle just returns a stream, but nothing happens on the file system after that. We could start piping it here, and from there on we could pipe it to some save function, fs.write file, something that Node.js already has, or we can start using it with Gulp. As said, this is just a content stream, so the contents that we extract here is plain text. It's the compiled file that we had, or the compiled contents. We don't have any file information yet. And as we know, a vinyl file object to be runnable and workable with Gulp needs not only the contents, but also a name and a path. And that's what we are going to provide Gulp now. There's a nice wrapper for it, which is called vinyl source stream. I hope I have it installed. Yep, I have. And we're going to pipe the real contents to this source stream plugin and give it a name, Browserify.js. And then we pipe it with our Gulp functions that we have already seen to the scripts folder. So let's run it again. Gulp Browserify. Boom. It took a tad longer. That is a writing operation. And if you have a look at scripts, we have a Browserify.js. It is here. And as you can see, it's just the plain contents, a little require module exports wrapper on top of it, and just the plain contents as we have written them early on. It would be nice if we could, from here on, transform them even further. So starting here with pipe source, we have not only a text stream, but a virtual file object, a vinyl file object. The contents, however, are still streams, so we can't use them in a majority of Gulp plugins to this date, just a few, mainly because streams just read and move on to the next chunk, and for instance, Uglify needs to move around in the whole space to get references right. So what we are doing is to convert the contents inside the vinyl file object from a stream to a buffer. We have another plugin for that. It's called vinyl buffer. And you see, alone from the prefix of the plugins, that's something to do with the virtual file system. That's not something to do with Gulp in particular, but more with the layer underneath that handles streams. And we pipe it through the buffer plugin. And after that, we pipe it through Uglify. So I'm running it again. And as you can see here, it's all gibberish now. And that's about it. If you have React.js files, for instance, you can use a transform called Reactify. It's all EFI in here. It's if you have, you can use Uglify either here, or you can use it directly in Browserify, then it would be Uglify. For React, it's Reactify. For Babel, it's Babelify. So look out for those plugins. But hey, what we did, we used a completely different technology, like Browserify, and made it runnable with our environment. We made it gulpable. And not only that, we could use the contents after that and transform it even more with even different plugins. All right. So, bundle emits a stream, but no one file objects. And with source, we are going to wrap it, the original stream, into a one file object. With buffer, we can convert the stream contents into a buffer for plugins who need a buffer, who have to do more operations than just taking the stream and piping it along. And so we can use Uglify in the end. All right, so that's one of those things where I really like Gulp. You can use basically any technology that has some asynchronicity with it and use it in Gulp. Promises streams of any kind. And since we are already dealing with streams, we can use it even further. We can use it to create really advanced build pipelines that are easy to read, easy to write, and easy to maintain, but do a lot of stuff. And one example that I want to show you today, for this kind of examples, for stream erase and merge stream, is a static site generator. Who in here knows what a static site generator is or does? Okay. Anybody of you heard of Jekyll? Okay, quite a few. The same people that are familiar with static site generators, actually. So just a quick thing, but what should a static site generator do? A static site generator creates static HTML files. So what we are going to do is we are writing our own kind of blog system or article system where we can write in one syntax like Markdown or in basic HTML, and we can create static sites out of it with extra permalinks so that it feels like a real site. 4 different types of content for posts and pages. One example that I can give you is my blog. So what you can see here, that's basically a list of blog entries, and you see here is a permalink that I have decided on, Gulp merge CDI files into your pipeline. That's going to be cool. I'm going to show you that later on. Or other static sites like my about page and so on, blog articles and other stuff. But I've written that in a completely different syntax. Actually, it's one of those posts, and it's written in plain Markdown with a few informations on top and just plain text. But it gets converted into HTML, wrapped into some layout, and served on a static server. It's just a static site, and a process runs over those files and creates the output that I want. So thinking of a process running over files, converting them and saving them somewhere, that kind of sounds like a good job for Gulp, I think. So the stack we are going to use for that, we are creating a Gulp build pipeline, and we use Cramdown to convert Markdown to HTML. We use Nunchucks, that's not quite true. I use Swig here for a templating engine, so we can have variable parts here. And we can rename posts to feature a blog permalink from the format year, month, and day, and the title of the blog post. And we rename pages just to have a pretty URL. Usual pipeline would look like that. We have some sort of post, maybe in Markdown that we club. We pipe it through the Markdown pipe. We pipe it through some sort of wrapper so that we can make it usable for our templating engine. Then we pipe it through the templating engine that rename it to have a good permalink, and then we save it. So that's a lot of processes here, just for the posts in Markdown. We don't only want to feature Markdown posts, but also HTML posts. And for HTML, we have roughly the same pipe. We just don't run it through the Markdown process. But we also wrap it in a layout string. We also run it through our templating engine. And we rename it to be a good post, to be one post that feels blog-like. So this part here is actually exactly the same. But with Grunt or any other build tool, you might have to create 2 pipelines to do so. Same with pages. I don't know if you've seen any change here, but that's the old one. The source has changed to pages. With pages, we have the same issue. We want to create pages which feature a different permalink and are located in a different folder, but the pipeline is totally the same. With Grunt, we would have to create 4 build configurations for that. And with Gulp, now we want to do it just in one. Okay, so what if we could reuse parts of the stream? And that's what I'm going to show you right now. I've already prepared a little bit, just to give me actually a head start. And I delete the build folder. So we have here some pages. One is in HTML. This is the Uber about page. It's just a headline. Maybe let's do some lorem ipsum content in here so that we have some stuff to read. We have an index, it just says test, that's way too few. Headline. Headline 2, just a few headlines, just some HTML. And here we have Markdown. Let's see if Markdown works. It works here, that's a spoiler. Does it work? Is it amazing? Those 2 stars actually give bold text, and 1 star does italic. So that's basic Markdown. It can convert to HTML. And of course we have posts. The posts feature some format which is year, month, day, and the title we want to have it. And I create another one. 2015. It's November the 10th. HTML example .html. And I just say hello. Devoxx. This is the workshop. Part 2. All right, so those are our files, and I have it now here in the very same directory. I already done something in the Gulp file. I need the path module to transform paths. And what I already did is, first the layout. This is the standard layout. It's written in Swig. So we have here some just basic HTML framework, and here we have a block where we want to insert our content. So everything that we compile should be inserted here. And we can do that by wrapping our original files into something like that. We're extending it from the original layout. That's all Swig, that's all the template language that we use. And we wrap our original contents in this content block. And what Swig does is it checks, okay, this is my layout. It's layouts/base.html. And the thing that is in this content block, we are going to insert into the content block that we have already. So for the layout, this is before the content. This is after the content, obviously. All right, and I already have prepared some renaming functions. You can easily rename with Gulp, and what you get is a file name. And what we can do is that we rename, that's for the block, yeah. We name the extension separately to the other files. So what we're going to do is we rename the extension to HTML and the base name to index. So if you want to have some sort of directory looking like links, that we can say just, okay, that's 2015 slash 11 slash 10 slash some name slash index.html, and you don't serve the index.html, so you have some sort of permalink like you would have in some sort of content management system, WordPress, whatever. And what we are doing is that we take the base name, which is everything but the extension, and split it with every dash. So we have now tuples like 2015 is in an array, an element in the array, 11 is an element in the array, 10 is an element in the array, so that's our date. We are going to take those 3 date tuples out of that array, and we create a new file name, which is the directory name where we came from, the first date, then slash the second part of the date, slash the third part of the date. And then we are going to join all the remaining parts of our array again by dash. So what we are doing here with these 2 lines of code is just extracting the date from the file name and creating a file name that's directory based. That's the new directory. The new name of the file, of the blog file, is index, so that we have this kind of structure. All right, so let's create the first pipeline. We want to convert all the markdown files from the posts and convert them to some static site. I'm creating a default task. I already included all the plugins that we need. And I create a new stream. I glop all my posts, but just the markdown ones. And I pipe it through the cramdown task. Cramdown is a converter from markdown to HTML. Then I'm going to need it to be compatible with my layouting engine. So I wrap it into the layout string I defined earlier with the layout path and the content, with the Gulp wrap plugin, which does exactly that. It just wraps content. So now it's compatible with Swig. So let's use it with Swig. Now I have a compiled HTML file which has been compiled with templating engine to have some layout, to have some basic HTML markup. So I rename it with the blog rename function. And what I should get now is a compilation of all the markdown files in there. Boom. And that's what I got. I have a build directory, I have the year, I have the month, I have the date, I have the permalink name, and here I have an index.html file. If I'm going to serve that by a static server, it would just be this URL. But it just created some markdown files. I didn't do anything with the HTML files. So let's fix that. I can't use the cramdown task on HTML files, otherwise I would have just adapted the source string. So I'm going to glop them separately. And you can do that by of course by Gulp.source. So I have these files that I want to not run with cramdown or markdown, and those who should run with markdown. So what I could do is merge those 2 streams, and the merge stream should run through all the other stages. I have a plugin that's also a plugin that's from the Node stream ecosystem, not from Gulp directly. It's basically Node, which is called merge2. Remember through 2 previously. So what I'm going to do, I merge the first pipe, which is Markdown and Cramdown, and the second stream, and then I pipe them through layout string, swig, rename, block, and save them. Okay, that would have been faster the other way around. All right, so let's see what happens. Oh, that wasn't it. I forgot to save it? Ah, thank you. So again, as you can see here, I now have two folders, 2015-08, that was when I first came up with that idea, basically. And then 11, 10, the HTML example, and it's already wrapped in the contents that we had earlier. Same with here. I'm so happy with my blog. So, so far we have already merged two streams of different types or different formats into one stream and reuse the files here for the rest of the pipeline. Gulp 4 actually has, for such cases, another way to do it without the merging. So you have the original pipe. And we know that starting here, we actually want to have more files in it. So what we can do, we can use Gulp source again. And I think we have to add the pass-through argument. I'm not quite sure. This might break. Nope, it didn't. That was exactly it. So instead of merging, we can also use a pass-through stream for that, and we have still the same results. That's new to Gulp 4. If you want to do it with Gulp 3, just use the merge. And this just works if you want to add new files into the stream that already exists. So maybe if after we have some swig stuff, we want to add already compiled files, already finished files, none that should be wrapped or used in any templating layout, we can add them here again. So it's just adding new files to our stream with Gulp source. But that's just for posts. We also have pages. For pages, we have a different renaming functions. I called it pretty because from pretty URL. We are going to change the X name also to HTML. And if the base name doesn't feature any index, we are going to make the original base name another directory name. So about becomes /about, test becomes /test, and the base name is going to be set to index again. So that's the renaming functions for all the other pages, just doing /about /test /something. So what I prepared here is some sort of array from all the different stuff that I want to connect. And what I can do with an array is, of course, I can use all the array functions that I have at my disposal, like, for instance, map. So I map this array of pages and posts with those two renaming functions, and I return maybe I can do the renaming functions a little bit earlier. Yep. And I return the basic stream that I already had. But here I'm going to change some of the stuff depending on the element that I'm currently looking at. This is also ECMAScript 6 syntax you can have with such a backtick. You can do some templating inside those strings, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to glop them from the directory where I'm in, and I rename them, of course, depending on the rename functions that I already had there. And what I get is, from an array of data, I get an array of streams. And those streams I'm going to merge with the merge plugin and pipe it through the rest. So this creates an array of streams with different parameters. Starting here, everything else is just the same. Wrap it and run it through the layout, through the templating engine. And then, of course, save it again to the build folder. So if I'm going to run Gulp now, I should have a complete site. Oops, stream is not defined. Sometimes I wish for an IDE. Boom. And what I got now is, in my build folder, I have the posts hidden under 2015, and I have an about page, I have a test page, and I have the index.html file. That's what I wanted to keep. I wanted to have the index just where it is. So what I've done here basically is creating 4 different streams doing 4 different things, or roughly the same things, but on different types and on different input formats. But the stream is still the same. It's just piping it from Markdown, adding the other files, renaming it, wrapping it through the layout engine, and we can maintain it on one place. If we want to add new stuff, just add a new task in here. If we want to remove something because we don't need it anymore, just remove it. And you are doing it for all the types and all the formats that you already have. And this is one of Gulp's biggest advantages. The way to use streams like you would do it with standard node streams, you can do it on your file transforming plugins. You can create a static site generator just in no time. All right, so as said, we combine multiple sources to one stream. Here it is done with merge. We can also use pass-through streams to add new files to our stream throughout. And we use an array function, the array mapping function, to create a so-called stream array. If you Google it for it, stream arrays are actually the one thing you will find throughout documentation, Stack Overflow, wherever. Okay, so a lot of basic things that we learned already. Now I want to combine them all to one thing. And this is a demo I'm going to show you line by line. I prepared it the last week. I'm not going to live code it because it's just too huge. But as you know, I work for a company called Ruxit. And we have this software over here, which is application performance monitoring for your application. And I'm using it on a daily basis because I'm working at the same company, of course. And one thing that I use constantly is this screen where I can see the user action duration, which is like the median user action duration of my application. How fast is my website when a user accesses my website? And turns out that we do have an API for that. And what I've written last week was just a way for me to test if the new file, the new site that I'm going to produce and upload to a dev environment, is it as fast as the real user impressions that I record from the tool that we are using. And this features a various number of technologies for Gulp. So I created a task that's called compare. And before I can compare anything, I'm going to measure my current deployment. I'm going to measure my dev environment. And measure returns this task, return Phantom. That's a promise. That's an async promise. Let's just have a look inside this run Phantom. Phantom is, who in here knows Phantom? Quite a few. Phantom.js is a headless browser. It's basically a WebKit implementation that allows you to open sites, run JavaScript on it, communicate with this environment without having a browser open, actually. It's just running somewhere in the memory. You can create screenshots with it, you can execute JavaScript with it, and you can create some metrics and read some stuff from a real browser environment without opening, actually. And Phantom has a cool API for Node.js, which we are going to use in this kind of pyramid of doom, because it's not really promisified. So we create a new Phantom instance, and we get this Phantom instance. We create a new page, and for this page we open our development server URL. I can show you what the URL is, because just for today I opened it up for the public so it can work here in the conference Wi-Fi. Once we've opened it, we can run evaluation functions like page.evaluate, and what we're doing here is we're doing some performance timing. Just a quick hint what performance timing actually does. So you have this object in the DOM which is called window performance, and you have here window performance.timing, and this is an object of all the times in timestamps, like that's the date where that occurred, where you can see from the very request when it started, when the response started, when it ended, and all the other events in between that happened in the browser, like when was the document complete, when was the whole document content loaded, when could we do something with the DOM, when was the browser listening to events, and of course when was the whole load complete, like load event start, and when load event end is the date where everything was there and fully available. And that's the metric we are going to look at. So what we are going to do here is we check the time between the load event start, or the request start, and load event end. So from the date when we are going to do the request up till the time where the whole page is loaded. And the difference is something in milliseconds. And once we get that, we are going to close Phantom down and are resolving the promise with the result. So a promise, usually we would call here another callback, but with a promise you can just have two standard callbacks like resolve and reject, and this allows us to use this dense structure of functions. So we can run Phantom, then we are doing something different with it. And the result, first we are going to write it on the command line, and second we are going to save it in a variable that is available in the Gulp file. So let's run it. Gulp measure. It should take some time, but after a few seconds, I see that window load took about 4 seconds for my development URL. That's just done by a promise. And now I want to compare it. So first I measure it from the live system or from the dev system, and now I want to compare it with stuff from the dev system, from the live system. And I can do that with the request call. Request is also a plugin that does a fetch on some server and returns a stream, much like Browserify does with combining stuff and returning a stream. Request fetches stuff and returns a stream. We are combining an URL. We are going to, that's our ruxit.com tenant. That's the API in version 1. That's an API token I can't show you to. And we want to see the average number of window load calls from the time series user action duration for the last hour, and just give us the totals. The application is also, I guess that's the Ruxicom website. So that's the URL we are going to call. And once we called it, we are going to wrap it into a vinyl file object. We are making the contents bufferable, and here we are going to write our own Gulp plugin. So this is, so to speak, the new stuff. With through, that's the one thing that we've seen earlier with through.noapp. We can create new Gulp plugins. What we are getting is, that's basically a chunk of the stream. In this case, it's the file. It's the encoding from the file, and it's the callback that should be called once we are finished with transforming it. So here in the end, if we don't have any error, we are just calling the callback with no error and passing through the new file so we can move on through the next stage. And what we're doing here, that the file contents, we loaded something from the web, we created a file out of it. We are going to read those contents and JSON parse it so that we have a JavaScript object that we can use here. And after that, we are going to sort all the data points that we have hidden here. So just for you to see how this kind of looks, that's the application that we are going to ask, and those are all the data points. That's just timings with the timestamp similar to the window performance timing, and some time in microseconds. And you have an endless list of data points in there. We're going to sort it ascending so that we have the fastest one at the top and the slowest one at the end. We're going to filter all the ones where we don't have any time. That can happen. After that, we are going to find the entry that's with those two lines, the entry that's in the middle one. So the mean, that's the mean entry where we want to compare it. So it's not the slowest, not the fastest, but just something in between. And for this element, we are going to transform it from microseconds to milliseconds. And if it's slower than the current value, or if the current value is slower than the value that we selected, than the mean value, we're going to create an error. Your site is too slow. That's the error function in the callback, and pass it through. Otherwise, we say, okay, all is fine, move on. So that's basically the plugin that we did. Getting those files, parsing the files, sorting the files, finding the one in the middle to compare, do the comparison, and if anything goes wrong, break the build. That's also what we are doing here. If there is an error, we are going to throw this new error to break Gulp so that Gulp doesn't save the file and the build breaks. So you can use it in some sort of integration environment where you want to do checks with the live environment and the dev environment. And you can't move it forward from dev to live if it's too slow or something like that. Also, this is kind of very strict. It has to be smaller than the current value. That could be fuzzy, but for demo reasons, it should be enough. And of course, if everything is okay, we're going to save it just to have some sort of validation or result in the end. All right, let's do Gulp compare. It starts measure takes some time, so this is going to be slow. 6 seconds, boom, and you have an error. Your site is way too slow. 3 seconds in average on the website, and 6 seconds or close to 7 seconds here. that's way too much. That's also a pretty ugly error message. But yeah. Okay, again. I want to have a green value for once. Nope, not going to happen. So this is actually using the conference Wi-Fi to make a connection up to our development server. So it's not as fast as it was when I was doing it at home. But anyhow, yeah, you see it. The build is breaking. You see the red arrow here, which tells you, nope, you can't continue with that. So that's it. Let's make it a little prettier here. And it takes some time. Okay, yeah. And it did not complete. All right, my site is too slow. I guess I have to pimp it up a little bit. And that's how you can use different technologies with Gulp. So here we created a promise just to execute something that isn't streamable or in any way related to the Gulp ecosystem. But promises are understood by Gulp. So if you wrap it into a promise and call the right calls, we can use this particular snippet of code here in Gulp and have a task that can be run in series in parallel as we like it, much like that. And we can do further steps with the .then function and do something with the results. Here, we requested a URL from some place in the web, created a file out of it, and analyzed those files with our very own plugin. Through that object, and with this parameters, the chunk, which is the file that we get, we are in object mode, the encoding, and the callback to move on to the next file. And that's about it. I'm about 10 minutes finished too soon, but some guys in here wanted to ask me, yeah, that's a picture that you have to take. Some guys in here wanted to ask me where can you find all this stuff. First, on GitHub/frontend tooling, there are all the samples that I did today. There's the sample project Gulp, which is the one that we were working with throughout the whole course. The static site generator that I've shown you in the end. Check out my blog. There's lots and lots of articles on Gulp, especially on Gulp 4. I guess I have about 20 articles on the topic. And of course, I will put up my slides all on speakerdeck/speakerdeck/deadparrot. And if you're interested in even more, so that's just the Gulp part. If you're interested in even more, I'm writing a book called Frontend Tooling. You can get 39% off with this code. So that's also a picture for you. And I have one book to give away for the audience here today. So there is this tool where you can do feedback or stuff like that. The funniest question wins, all right? So if you have one really cool question in here or something that you really want to know, and maybe it's funny, just ask. I will gladly give one free coupon code that I have to the one person that is the lucky one. Well, other than that, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, since we finished too soon, I'll gladly answer any questions in person or directly here. If not, hit me up on Twitter and say hi. I'm here for you. Goodbye.